Today is Wednesday, May 1st, 2024, and I would like to welcome you all to a special call Budget and Finance Committee meeting. We all know why we're here today. We are very excited. I'm calling this meeting to order, and we are going to start off with words from our resident city DJ. He's not doing a set for us today, but he will leave us with some information. So with that, I would like to bring up Mayor Freddie O'Connell.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. My thanks to Vice Mayor Angie Henderson for her leadership of this body, to Chair Delicia Porterfield and Vice Chair Quante Toombs for their leadership of this committee, the committee members who will be working through hearings over the next few weeks, and to the members of this historic Metro Council for your work on behalf of the city. Thanks also to the Nashvillians who are watching this special called Budget and Finance Committee meeting, and certainly thanks to Finance Director Kevin Crumbo and his team at the Metro Nashville Finance Department and my team in the Mayor's office for their work in putting together this year's recommended budget. During today's special meeting, I'll provide a brief overview of the budget. Then Finance Director Crumbo will go over our revenue projections. Budget Officer Aaron Pratt will review expenses, and Dr. Sneh Patel will speak to our budget equity tool and how we apply it to our operating budget. I'm honored to be here with you this afternoon to present our recommended fiscal year 2025 operating budget to the members of the Metro Council and to the public we serve. I'm pleased to recommend a balanced budget that has us living within our means without raising taxes, invests in our people and our priorities, and sets us up for success in future years. We're projecting total revenues of $3.27 billion, about the same as last year. This leaves me very optimistic about the next 12 months and beyond, because even though the city's revenue projections are not showing growth as significant as we've seen over the past few years, which we've been acknowledging for months now, our priorities are intact. We're addressing our cost of living and the affordability of Nashville in response to feedback we've heard from residents in every Metro Council district. This is a budget that puts people first in many ways. Here are a few highlights. This budget responds to the affordable housing challenge in Nashville by ensuring another $30 million is invested in the Barnes Housing Trust Fund, extending a recommendation from the 2021 Affordable Housing Task Force report. This budget reinforces our commitment to Metro Nashville Public Schools, investing $18 million for student textbooks and continuation of multiple great programs funded initially by the Federal Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief, or ESSER program. With federal funding closing, we're providing a bridge to sustain these services. Regarding Metro employee pay, this budget funds the data-driven Metro Human Resources recommendation to the Civil Service Commission, which means it includes merit increases for eligible employees, market-based salary adjustments, and a 3.5% cost of living increase for Metro workers, including teachers. In addition, we're raising our minimum hourly wage up to $20 for general government employees. This living wage focus is a key part of the overall recommendation for salaries. Keeping our focus on customer service, this budget takes an important step toward creating a department to manage trash and recycling collection. We're setting the foundation for a separate standalone department to manage Nashville's solid waste. To maintain services and present a balanced budget, we're targeting 1.4% in overall department budget savings and maintaining a strong fund balance policy that prepares us for a rainy day. Metro is currently enjoying its highest financial ratings in recent history, and this helps maintain it. To be clear, as many of you know, this was a challenging budget cycle for many reasons. Our revenues are expected to be nearly the same as last year, so our spending will be nearly the same as well. This means we can't accomplish everything we want in a single year, but we do some important things. We are investing in our people. We're still going to have among the best paid teachers and the best paid police in the state of Tennessee. We're investing in key services and programs like the Barnes Fund so we can simultaneously improve customer service and make it just a little easier for more Nashvillians to stay here. We're also recognizing the many pressures impacting the upcoming fiscal year, tightening our belt just a little, allowing us to be stewards of both public trust and public dollars. And with your help, we know we're also still advancing other key priorities like immigration legal services and eviction counsel. As you're aware, many of the city's key initiatives this year fall outside the operating budget, and we appreciate the work we've done together on the East Bank, and I'm excited about the conversation ahead on our proposed transportation improvement program. Thanks to each of you for your time this afternoon and your willingness to do the work ahead. I look forward to the conversation that follows. As you know, one of the most important jobs in the finance department is to do a revenue forecast. That's how we determine what our budget can effectively accommodate. I'm going to hand things over now to Finance Director Kevin Crumbo of the Finance Department to discuss the forecast. Director Crumbo.
Well, good afternoon. As I approached the podium up here, I was amused to watch former District Councilman Freddie O'Connell and former District Councilman Angie Henderson and former District Councilman Dave Rosenberg and a few others determine actually where they were going to sit. Because the first time that I was here was in 2019, and I remember District Councilman O'Connell being over here and Mr. Rosenberg here and Angie Henderson there and a few others, right? And at that time, our financial position was in a much different place than we find it today. It was quite troubled. The city was running low on cash because we'd been through a few cycles where we'd invested heavily in the city. We had not really adjusted our tax base and our revenues to match up to that. And many of you were here at the time or perhaps watching on a camera. I can remember that the state was here threatening to take over the city, really if we couldn't get our act together. We got our act together. And in the 4 years that have followed that, the city is in the best financial condition that it has been in a very, very long time. And I am delighted to hear now Mayor O'Connell talk about introducing a budget that will really keep it that way. He's talked already about the key priorities that are built into that. You're going to hear some more of those details here from Aaron and Snee here in just a moment. The key thing that the mayor has asked me to address with you is the revenue forecast. And that revenue forecast has been the subject of some headlines even before we've gathered here today, primarily because the state has been debating their budget recently, and there's been quite a lot of headlines there about the flattening of revenues across the state. And so the first thing I want to tell you about the revenues is that we're anticipating the city revenues are going to be rather flat as well. They're going to be approximately $3.3 billion, we believe, in the year ahead. That's just a little bit more than the $3.2 billion that we've had this year. And the position that leaves us in, of course, is budgeting to nearly that same amount of revenue this year, despite some inflationary pressures that are coming our way in the coming year. So that is our forecast, and as Aaron talks through the details here, you'll see where those are reflected in our targeted budget savings, where we're doing some belt tightening in some areas, certainly investing in others. And so as we think about those revenues, we just don't think about them one time per year. We think about them all year long. We do have an internal team that tracks that throughout the year. We also have a group of economists at the University of Tennessee, and then some others that advise us throughout the year on that forecast. So as there's changes, as things change, throughout the year, and they usually do, we'll be coming back to you from time to time if there's adjustments we need to make and can do other things in our budget as we go along. So with all that said, I just want to say thank you to Aaron, to Snee, the finance department that has worked so hard on this. Many of them are seated here. Kristen Wilson and her team from the mayor's office and others that have really supported bringing the budget together. And so without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Aaron to really go through the details.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I want to thank Mayor O'Connell. I want to thank Vice Mayor Henderson. I want to thank Budget Finance Chair Porterfield, esteemed members of the Budget and Finance Committee, members of council, and of course, the Finance Director, Kevin Crumbo, and others in the Mayor's office. This was a labor of love. I would say that this was a good process for us to go through after the last couple of years, peaking out of COVID, understanding where we are and understand where we're going. So in that, we definitely want to understand where we are. There has been a lot of progress over the last couple of years by previous council, current council, to make sure that we are in the best financial position that we can be in. And that is a great opportunity for us to actually take a breath, look forward, And then, as Mayor O'Connell stated, live within our means a little bit, tighten our belt a little bit. Look at what we're doing, utilize some of the resources that we have in metrics to make sure that what we're doing as Metro actually is purported in the data, in the measures, and in everything that we're doing. Sorry. So with that, we continue to have a clean audit. That is amazing for us to have a clean audit year over year, making sure that our financial positioning, make sure that our records and our files all match the things that we say we're going to do. We have an amazing fund balance policy. We have an amazing fund balance. And fund balance is just the opportunity for us to be able to leverage ourselves to do things within our current budget, revenues, and expenditures, and also have a little bit of a savings. Our debt ratings are excellent, thanks to our team in Treasury. We have a balanced budget for fiscal year 25. And the economy, although the economy has seen some plateauing, we are still in a great position as Metro to be able to move forward and do the things that we are currently doing, our core and key services, and reach the opportunities afforded to us as we move forward. With that, we've done a lot of things in this current fiscal year 24 budget. We have 2 more months to continue to do great things, but there are a lot of projects that are currently underway, that are currently being completed, and these are just some of the visual highlights of some of the projects that talks to the things that we are funding through the fiscal year 24 budget. With that, this is an example of the historical Sunnyside remodeling in the top left, Parks Mill Ridge Playground. This is some of the traffic calming improvements that NDOT is currently doing. And this only speaks to the immense amount of projects we have going on that are of this typical size and scale. Historical revenues and current revenue projection. This is important for us because, as you all see, the trend line goes from fiscal year 10 and shows how before the pandemic, we actually had sort of this nominal growth of revenue, in which we stayed in our expenditure concept. And then in COVID years, as what we thought would happen didn't really happen, there was a great boon of federal funding, federal influx monies coming into Metro. And then with that, we were able to, in a lot of sense, gain the ground that we couldn't have gained otherwise, capitalize on some of the opportunities that those dark times brought us, create fund balance policy, have fund balance. And then now what we're seeing is we're seeing a normalization and a plateauing back to sort of the trend line if COVID was never introduced into our lives. But our revenues are still strong. We still have growth, and there are still opportunities to maintain our current set of environments and make sure that we are actually continuing to look forward to reassessment periods and new fiscal years. So with that, we'll get into the current 25 budget. As belt tightening goes, we have to look at what the budget message said and what the budget instructions detailed. And with that, we do have core contractual services. We do have debt obligations that need to be paid first. So this budget, in a long story short, is going to be a lights-on budget. We need to make sure that we are covering our expenditures that we are obligated to and make sure that the growth we do have is invested in people. So with this, previously anticipated the revenue growth for 23 year-end and has persisted to fiscal year 24. We expect to see continued growth throughout 25. Again, this is utilizing University of Tennessee Boys Center to make sure that we are on par and not overstating our revenue projections as compared to the state. So we want to make sure that we're in alignment with what the University of Tennessee Boys Center is seeing, then also our budget revenue manager is seeing. So then that way our current specific fiscal data is tracked on a day-to-day basis, week-to-week basis, month-to-month basis to make sure we're coming up with the most accurate, conservative fiscal projection that we can. So then that way we don't overextend ourselves. So that's one of the major things that we looked at in this current fiscal year 25 revenue projection. With that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Sneh Patel because we'll talk about how do we get here from an expenditure structure perspective and what the budget equity tool did for us.
Thank you, Aaron, and thank you, Budget and Finance Committee members for having us here and always giving our office an opportunity to share some of the work that we do. For those of you who are new to council, the budget equity tool is a project that our office does where every year we ask departments to look at their budgetary ask through an equity lens. Now, last year we changed the format of that a bit to focus really on the budget ask that they were making that particular fiscal year. And we asked them to think about in 3 different areas, where did they see their budget making the biggest impact? First, did they see this budget request having a specific impact on underserved or disadvantaged populations? We also wanted to know what investments that departments were making in terms of advancing diversity, equity, inclusion for their employees. And then finally, we wanted to know, even with the services available, what were they doing to make sure, 1, that they were accessible to all the residents of Nashville, and 2, that they were also holding themselves accountable to the goals that they put forth. When programs are funded, we need to make sure they're working at the most efficient way so that residents are getting exactly what they view in the budget. And then finally, we also ask departments to tell us about those budgetary asks that don't quite nicely fit into those categories, such as contractual obligations, the price of things going up, where we didn't really want them to make an equity argument just so they could give us an answer, but wanted them to really think about it. So now this year, the tool did stay the same. We asked the same 3 questions, but it doesn't mean that the way we viewed it is the same way. This is a new council. This is a new administration. This is a new budget situation. So with that, we're taking a different approach with how we're looking at these budgetary asks and what departments are saying they're doing in equity work, and really considering what our goal or our own role is in advancing some of these equity goals and making sure that we're going through. And then this slide, I've highlighted a few key areas of focus that our office is going to be taking on this year. One of the nice things about having this tool and having access to information from all these departments is you start to get that bird's eye view of operations. So common problems that you see different departments trying to face. Where can there be alignment? Where does there a policy need to be, instead of maybe looking through piecemeal approaches where we see different departments asking for things, but really there's something that we can do to really advance that practice in an equitable way across Metro. We also thought about ways that our office could be a strategic partner with them. So in some cases, when they're looking for ways to expand their operations, but for this budget year might not quite be possible, where can ODI fill in that space and make sure these equity goals are still being met? Of course, this also means relying on our community partners. They're a big part of why some of this work is able to get done and can maybe reach people in places that not necessarily all Metro employees are. So what role can we take in fostering those collaborations? And of course, bringing everything into alignment with similar equity goals. And finally, to get to the last point, it's all about accountability. So again, what are those data practices that need to be in place, but also just teaching people, training people what to do it, even providing some of that extra support so that they can really assess these and then start to think about, if a program's working, how do you keep it working, how to strategize, make the most of the resources. So with this, what our budget offers they represent, we also had to think about what, in terms of our own work, we're going to be doing this. So with our own budget, thinking about these things. And I would say that part of what our work this year is really reorienting from being reactive to our engagement to departments, to being much more proactive to the way that we work with them. Because just like with our financial situation, we want to promote stable, long-lasting practices that are going to make sure we have more equitable outcomes for our residents.
Thank you. And as Sinead mentioned, what we want to do and make sure that we're continually doing is engaging the departments, engaging our community, engaging our partners to make sure that what we're doing in this current fiscal or in the future fiscal year 25 is sustainable, is what we're making a difference on, and making sure that we're partnering and leveraging the resources that we currently have in order to get the maximum outcome. And I think that's the opportunity in this current fiscal year 25 budget. There is opportunity to leverage resources, to combine services, and look at what a similar department is combining. Like, for instance, ODI is providing a service that OMB is providing a service, and we can partner on that and make sure that we're providing a stronger service in one way or the other. So we've talked a lot about revenues, so I'll get to more of the expenses because I know that's what, a lot of people want to really understand. So the expenses of what we're funding, again, the debt service increases that we have to fund, the contractual increases. We're funding anything that was a partially funded increase in fiscal year 24. We're funding inflationary costs as departments have provided to us. I want to go back to the contractual increases because those contractual increases are Metro contracts. We understood and made sure that those are Metro current contracts that we're funding those increases on. And then lastly, we're funding the pay plan as a recommendation. One of the objectives, directives we were given is to make sure that in this funding, in this belt tightening, that we were told to make sure that no positions were impacted. We didn't want to have any undue impact to the current footprint of Metro staff. So in doing that, we'll get to what we came up with as a budget adjustment savings target to make sure that we can fund the maximum amount of pay plan that we could as recommended by HR, keep our current staffing footprint, and also be within a balanced budget and live within our means. Again, this is just a visual of what we are trying to accomplish. There's many different pieces of this puzzle that goes into creating a balanced budget, creating a fiscal year 25 operating budget. And what you all have is the next piece, one of the biggest and hardest piece. And I really appreciate your efforts and your work in going into understanding what this budget is and understanding what this budget can do and making sure that you provide us all the great direction of what this budget will be for fiscal year 25. But that also means that departments play a huge role in this. Equity plays a huge role in this, mayoral priorities. So there's a lot of factors in play that we definitely want to make sure that as we move forward through this fiscal year 25 planning process, we take all these factors into play. We get you the information that you need to make sure that you all have the full breadth of pros and cons of what a decision will do. What this budget also does, the $3.277 billion budget, there is no property tax increase, and we still remain in fund balance compliance. As our policy states, we have to maintain a fund balance compliancy, and we are living within our revenue projection. So these are some slides that we have that just gives the total breakout of our revenue picture, where the money comes from. I want to get to that. So 51%, half, comes from the property taxes. Local option sales tax accounts for 22%. Other governmental agency, federal funds, things like that accounts for 14% of our revenue source. All other funds, fees, related things like that accounts for 11%. And we're going to use 0.77% of fund balance in order to close the gap. Just the historical growth of our current budget. Last year, we were at 3.244 billion. This is excluding any interfund transfers and things like that. That's why you see 3.18. We had a $71 million transfer in this current fiscal year. But we're steadily projected growth and rising. But we still maintain our current property tax rate. So we're still in the same position as in previous years, as set by the brilliance of council before in the budgets. We still maintain the current rate for the property tax. So that means that we're still in a great position of where we've been, even though we are having to tighten our belt. So where's the money going? So almost half of it is going to the operating budget. That's personnel, and that's below the line operating costs. 38% is going to education, and 12.5% is going to pay down our contractual or our debt obligations. Of that, one of the highlights is this is related to the compensation, 3.5% COLA. So 46.7 million will be going to Metro general government employees. There will be a slide later that talks about schools specifically, because we did match our cost of living increase with Metro public schools. So we were able to, within this current budget, fund both Metro government and Metro schools at the same COLA amount. We have increments for eligible employees. We have merit eligibility. And again, as Mayor O'Connell stated, we're hitting a $20 minimum now for our lowest paid employees. Where does our expenditure, where does most of our budget goes? 44% goes to public safety and justice. General government has 23%. infrastructure and transportation. That's 12% of this current fiscal year 25 projected budget. And these are just the broad categories of where the current fiscal year 25 budget is going based upon the increases of the compensation package, the contractual service increase. In addition, this is all in the general fund. Now, how do we do that? We balance off of a 1.41% budget adjustment savings. That means that we ratcheted ourselves down 16.5 million in the general fund and 1.5 million in the USD, just to make sure that we can provide the best services, the best compensation package to Metro employees. And by that, we mean that each department, and we'll work with departments over the course of the next couple of weeks, departments will have their specific documents sent to them in the morning about what did get funded in their current budget, the things that are outlined in the current budget proposal. And then we'll talk with them also about how does this 1.41% show up as part of their budget. We'll work with them collaboratively over the course of fiscal year 25, because this is going to be a team effort to make sure that we maintain and stay within this 1.41% targeted amount. We do know that all departments all the time can't have it out of vacancies, out of below the line. So my office in the Office of Management, my division in the Office of Management and Budget will continually work with those departments in conjunction with ODI, in conjunction with OPM, to make sure that we are understanding the impacts of what we're asking. We're being nimble and flexible enough to allow them to make changes to what they told us in one previous month to a next, to maintain that they are in this 1.41%. And this was a higher amount when we started out, and we were able to create additional opportunities to buy down this budget savings amount. And what we eventually came up with is that departments normally, without any effort, return and we did the math on fiscal year 24, projected about $10 million in the GSD. So the $16 million is going to take a little bit extra effort, a little bit extra hand-holding with all of us to make sure that we get that extra $6.5 million of targeted savings, because that's really is what allows us to fund the compensation package, allows to fund the lights on services, allows us to continue to move forward without any negative impacts to staff. That's also to say is that we need all the vacancy positions in the current budget. We need the current budget. We funded those contractual increase and escalation costs for the departments to make sure that they had enough to give enough. So this budget, this targeted budget savings amount relies on the whole budget. And I definitely want to express that, because the departments need their whole current projected budget to maintain this targeted amount. If things change with this, the target amount may have to go up. But if it maintains and stays the same, then we can keep this target amount if the departments aren't impacted in their vacant positions. There's also other opportunities. Just because we're talking about the fiscal year 25 budget, that doesn't mean that we forgot about the current fiscal year 24 budget, or 4%, or the current capital projects that are ongoing in the departments. There's a lot of opportunities to continue the implementation of prior year investments of 4% funds, of capital funds. And also, there is still opportunity in this current fiscal year if a department sees that they do have a need that they can fund themselves this year, we can work with those departments and make sure that that funding source is actually available, that the projections that they do have in mind are accurate, and we can validate that and allow them to use their current fiscal year budget to get ahead of some of the challenges we'll face or opportunities we'll face in fiscal year 25. Again, we're using both years' budgets in order to make sure that departments aren't unduly impacted. So this is just another graphic of where our current expenditure categories sit. Salary and fringe, again, is over half of our current budget, and the operating all other costs is about 43% of the projected 25 budget. And through the years going backwards, that's the way it's kind of, most of our budget is consumed with personnel expense. Now for schools. Schools, we funded $41.6 million for their steps, their COLA increases, part of their contractual increase in inflationary costs, in addition to the $18 million that's being funded for their textbooks. Overall, their budget goes up to $1.24 billion. So that's a significant increase for them as well, and make sure that they do have the capacity in order to operate. Fund balances. So we wanted to show this because this year, with the fund balance policy being in its first implementation year, we wanted to show and make the statement that we are still maintaining our fund balance policy minimums. We are still having funds above fund balance policy reserves, and also we're maintaining and continuing to track how we're performing. Staying in compliance is everything. It allows us to be able to have better rates. It allows us to perform better as a metro government, and also it just gives us the stability that a lot of other municipalities just don't have. Of that, there's currently $38 million in a GSD that's been identified. This is partially where the funding mix of the Barnes funding, the $30 million will be coming from. $16.4 million that will be coming from this source. The textbooks for MNPS will be coming from this source at $18 million. NDOT Vision Zero will be coming from this source as well at $1.5 million. And planning infrastructure studies will be coming out of this source of $2.4 million. And this is just to say that we use every existing revenue source, funding source to us to make sure that we can stay within our current fiscal footprint and not really do burden to our citizenry. With that, we're getting into where we are now. So where we are now is a presentation of this projected fiscal year, Mayor's recommended fiscal year 25 budget. We have the Council Budget Committee meetings coming up 14th through the 23rd. And then the budget hearings will then follow, leading up to the council budget. It's going to be a great time. I'm looking forward to it, actually. And I really, again, appreciate the work that the Budget Finance Committee and council actually puts into this. This is great work. I love budget work, and the fact that I get to participate with you all, I'm excited about. So there's a couple of pieces of key legislation that's going to track with this current ordinance, the tax levy, the budget ordinance, the urban council resolution. What won't track with this budget is a new position ordinance and pay plan. HR stated that will be tracking on the 24th. Tax anticipation notices will be in that as well, and then the water pilot revenue. What we also will be filing next week will be the 4% resolution and a supplemental resolution as well. This current fiscal year, there is a need. This is our first year of the fund balance policy. There is a need from departments to make sure that they close the year balanced, which is an obligation of ours. So then that way we have to bring forward a supplemental in order to do that. All of our documents, every piece of everything that was submitted by departments as far as the requests, all of our documents, this presentation, they currently are posted to the Citizen Guide to the Budget. Those can be found. We'll make sure that the budget book, we're currently in development of that, be distributed. We're going to shoot for early next week to make sure that you all have that before we start the engagement with the departments. And any information that you all need, we're here to serve you all. Just let us know, and we'll make sure that we get it to you. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Director Crumbo, as well as Budget Officer Pratt. We will have a brief Q&A. Just a reminder, colleagues, we are not deliberating the budget at this time. We will have a brief Q&A with regards to the budget process. I did want to add a little context to the budget calendar. That information is available online, but it has also been sent to you. But for the viewing audience, just wanted to make sure that people also understand that we do have department questionnaires. So to our department heads, This is a reminder that your questionnaires will be due on May the 8th, and we would appreciate that you turn those in a timely fashion. We will have our department hearings on May 14th, 15th, 16th, and then the 22nd and the 23rd. The council wish list is being finalized, and you all will, council members, you will receive a copy of that wish list. The first version of your wish list is due on May the 23rd. Then we will have budget work sessions on the 28th, the 29th, and the 30th. On June the 4th, that will be the second reading of the budget. That will be our public hearing. So that's when we will have members from the community to come out and give feedback. There will be other opportunities to give feedback as well. But that's the meeting where the community comes out to give us feedback on the budget. There will be another work session on June the 5th. And then on June the 6th, your finalized version of the wish list will be due. We did give that second date so that you can make adjustments based on what you heard from that public hearing. We'll also have a work session on June the 6th. And if needed, we'll have a work session on June the 11th, as well as June the 12th. And the chair substitute budget will be filed on June the 12th. We will have our third and hopefully final reading of the budget on June the 18th. So again, I just wanted to make sure that you all had that information. And with that, we will take a few brief questions. Councilmember Allen, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate the opportunity to get a beginning of a viewpoint of this. For, I guess, Mr. Pratt, can you talk about two things? One, the fund balance policy for the new council members. If you could just talk about how we have dramatically improved what we used to have, and what that obligates us to, and what happens, what we can do if we have extra money.
Yes.
You are recognized, Mr. Pratt.
Sorry. Yes, that's a great question. So the fund balance policy, as it was written and introduced in this current fiscal year 24, sets a reserve for the general fund, GSD, USD, and schools at 17%. And it sets a separate reserve amount, minimum reserve amount at 50% for the debt service funds. And what that does is it obligates 2 months of revenue or 2 months of expenditures for those particular funds. Now, that calculation is at 17%. Now, if there's funding above that reserve amount, 17.5%, 19%, those funds then could be looked at to be distributed or requested to be distributed for other things. I think the important thing to note is that one-time funding source. That's the important thing to note. So the fund balance usage of those funds above the reserve policy amount is for one-time use. Right now, I think the substitution said the one-time use capital funded projects are to pay down debt. Yes.
Madam Chair. And then I saw a reference to the water pilot. And again, this is something that we have used for the stadium in the past, and that was why it was created. And so I would just, if we don't get to find out now, at some point, will we learn if that means the water pilot is now going away, or because we've promised our constituents that they're paying to get clean water when they pay their water rate. So, Madam Chair, if I could ask that question.
Thank you. I don't have the information of that offhand, but I could definitely follow up and provide that information for you.
Okay, and final question is, there was a reference to the tax anticipation notes, and my understanding is we do tax anticipation notes when the cash just, we know it's going to be there, but it just isn't flowing at the right time. And I guess I was sort of thinking with the fund balance policy, now we would always have cash when we need it. Is that not the way it works?
Essentially, yes. So essentially, it does work that way, but because of the time of the fund balance policy, because of having to actually actualize through the ACFR and make sure that those fund balance amounts were actually received and receipted and approved by the audit committee, we definitely had to use TANs in order to get us to that point. I think going forward, there may be opportunities to lessen that amount, but anytime there's fluctuation between when we adopt a budget, what we approve, and then also making sure we have the audited financial statements to be reconciled, we definitely want to make sure that we're not overburdening ourselves.
Thank you, Councilmember Allen. Councilmember Cash, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chair. Appreciate you recognizing me, even though I'm not on the committee. I'm going to ask about, like, we're getting a bunch of information about the revenues that are coming in and the expenditures. And I want to just take a minute to ask about assets, like the capital assets we have, especially land. I know a year ago there was a study that was taking place about our real estate assets. And I know that we can't sell off real estate or land to like put towards the operating budget, but, and correct me if I'm wrong, if I'm misstating this, but we can sell assets to pay down debt, which could reduce the percentage of interest that we're paying. In other words, I think you said 12.5% is what is what 12.5% of our operating budget is going towards paying debt. But if we can pay off some of the principal of that, that could be lowered, and it could open up other things for our budget, just as or it could open up more capacity to borrow for things that we might deem more important than some of the pieces of land that we're holding on to. So I just wonder if, when we're looking at budgets like this, and at what point can we consider, or do we consider, how some of those assets might be better used by selling them or retooling them or leasing them or something like that? Does that make sense?
Yes, and I would say you guys are probably the best informed to make that decision. What we do in budget is we make sure that the revenues meet the expenditures, and I think having the assets is actually a great thing, because then you can have this kind of conversation. I think our current fund balance policy and our availability of our policy and our revenue projections allows us to still maintain and go forward and have those assets in the back pocket. So I don't know the exact answer to that question, but I think that I would see guidance from council if that were to be the case, or Finance Director Crumbo, if that were to be an opportunity. But I don't think we're in a fiscally dire time right now to have to do that. That's just my.
I agree. I agree. We're not in a dire time, but there are still lots of things that we'd like to do that we're not able to do as fast as we'd want. I would like to ask Director, help me recall that we were doing a real estate study, and I think it was more about how we're using the assets that we have, and if we needed more office space, or if we had leases that we could get out of, or stuff like that. I remember purchasing was a part of it, I believe, or people from purchasing. Am I correct that there was a study? Was it completed?
Yeah, so I'll just briefly address this, and I think we're going to need to defer this discussion because it's a detailed one to another meeting, and we can assemble the folks to really help. But just in the word of you asked it, I will say there is no plan, and I mean no plan whatsoever right now to begin selling assets to pay down debt. I want to be very clear about that. Aaron is exactly right. We are in no position where that even needs to be a thought right now. To the extent we have real estate that we own today, if we use it, the utilization of that has been subject to a study. Ernst & Young and some others really pitching in on that, where we may have other assets that I think Aaron was referring to there that could be eligible for sale because we don't intend to use them or have some other purpose. That may be the subject of what you're asking
it is
about here. Yeah. And so those are things that we can look at in the future, but just with the discussion here, I don't want anyone to feel like that we're beginning to sell assets to balance a budget. When I was on the podium earlier and referring to 2019, there was some of that happening, and we quickly got that reversed here. So if you'd be so willing, what we'll do is I'm glad to meet with you and talk about the real estate. Aaron's right. It would be a legislative body here and a mayor that would really propose. We want to go about a different real estate strategy, and we'll take that to another meeting, another discussion, and be glad to get into those details with you.
Thanks. I did not mean to imply that we should have a fire sale or anything like that. I just know that we probably have some assets that we don't have, solid intentions for, and that should be discussed at some point. One more quick thing. You kind of answered this, but I want to be direct. I want to ask this so I can get a direct answer. At this point, with the fund balance policy, you clearly said that we can't pay for, we can pay for one-time expenses. You said capital and paying off debt. But correct me if I'm wrong, at this point, we still cannot, I understand we can't raise salaries with that fund balance policy, but can we pay one-time bonuses to employees with that policy? Or would it need to be changed?
within the current context of the policy, yes, it fits into a one-time category, but
I'm asking about a bonus.
Bonuses,
Like
yes.
we have some money left over,
Yes.
and some employees have had to do extra work because we have that extra money because positions were unfilled. Can we pay those employees some bonus, one-time bonus, or does our fund balance policy prohibit that?
I think the fund balance policy, I don't think prohibits that. But what I would say is that HR would probably need to look at, because from an equity perspective, pay equity perspective, you can't pay some for doing something, then you won't pay others. I think what we're trying to do and what this budget accomplishes, it looks at the total, both GG and MNPS, and give equal compensation to all. And I think in a bonus aspect, it creates a false narrative that we can give it to you right now, but you may need it tomorrow. But it's a one-time thing. And I want to make sure that, anything of that state should be just used for, to be honest, there's things that are going to happen that we know that are going to happen from, disasters and things like that. That's what you should use that for. I think bonuses and the compensation package right now is extremely adequate as recommended by HR.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pratt. And Councilmember Cash, I invite you to come to some of our work sessions where we will be deliberating this. So thank you so much. Councilmember Gamble, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chair. In the past, the council members have received a budget book with details about the request from the various departments. Will we receive that book this year? And if so, when will it be available?
Mr. Pratt, you're recognized.
Thank you for that question. Yes, you will receive that. We're currently working on it, and in lieu of that, we'll probably have that mostly by Monday afternoon. We're just doing some of the fine-tooth and edits that we need to do. But what we do have that's on the Citizen Guide to the Budget is the actual documents that we met with the departments on a week-to-week basis, and shows their full requests. In addition, what we'll have tomorrow morning is the detailed requests of everything that's currently in the mayor's recommended budget. And then also separately, everything that's outside of the mayor's recommended budget. So yes, you'll have a multitude of documents, hopefully the budget book by close of business Monday.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions? I did also want to remind colleagues that we do have the budget SharePoint, and once we get the questionnaires from the various departments, that will be posted on the SharePoint as well. Any additional questions? Councilmember Allen, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to say, sometimes in poking around on the budget site, there's also I'm not sure exactly what the name of it is, but a budget discussion document that shows what each department has said. If we could add money, this is what we'd like to add it on. And sometimes just in terms of saying what were their key priorities, that has specific costs for things as well as what's their, 1, 2, and 3, and 4 priorities. So that's a really useful document that I believe is already out there on the Citizens Guide to the Budget website. Is that where it's located? So that's a really helpful document for department as well.
Thank you, Councilmember Allen. Any other questions? All right, seeing none. It's a little too good to be true here. Are we sure we don't have any other questions? All right, seeing none, we are going to go ahead and adjourn this meeting. Thank you all so much for your time, and our meeting is adjourned.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information on this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.